Forkless Cafe, your weekly DLT insights. My name is Andrew. I'm Hedera Hashgraph's social media manager. Welcome to a very cool episode that we got lined up for you today. We're going to get through the boring stuff, the disclaimer and all of that. And then we're going to introduce our guest. I got Sharon managing the live chat. So if you're joining us live today, tell us where you're joining us from. Drop some questions in the live chat for us. If you got questions for our guest or for myself, or today's co-host, Brady, my coworker Brady is joining us, which is super exciting. And let us know where you're coming from. But if you're watching the recording, maybe you can let us know in the comments section if you have any questions for us, and we can get to it a little bit later. So starting things off with the agenda, our objective is to share interesting DApp news interesting DApp news in the industry and the Hashgraph ecosystem. We're going to start things off with our guest, Lucas, and then move on to the DApp highlights, Hedera highlights, and then Hero of the Week when we wrap up the stream. So without delaying any further, Lucas, thank you so much for joining us today on Forkless Cafe, our weekly live stream. This gives us an opportunity to connect with the community and highlight some of the trending news that was really making an impact over the previous week. It's our chance to kind of point out what's really resonating with people. But we're so fortunate to have you on here. I was lucky enough to meet you at Hedera 18 in October of last year in Dallas at the developer conference and hackathon. And so we want to learn more about Otrafy. And so for those of you for those people watching that aren't familiar with you or Otrafy, why don't you give us a little background on yourself and give us an intro?
Yeah. Well, thanks for the invite. Great to be here. You know, Hedera is definitely been a great big deal for Ultraphi from the beginning, and it's a part of the roots of our company, meaning that we the first conference that we traveled to together as a team was Hedera 18. We participated in other conferences locally before, but the first real one that we were like, yeah, this is going to become a thing was Hedera 18. That conference is also where we met Mark Chang and his team that was investing in projects back then, and basically got our first investment and allowed us to start the company and move forward with our goals and then restructure the company and improve our ideals. So it's definitely been a big part of who we are and what we are doing. Personally, I am the COO at UltraPhi. So my responsibility and role is everything around partnership with clients, client support, client management, as well as going after new accounts and new partnerships. I come from Brazil originally. When I was in Brazil in I think that was back in 2013 when I first heard the word blockchain and Bitcoin. I was going to law school, and back then I remember, so I had this friend of mine, and he was staying in my house over the week because we were organizing this political presentation thing going on there. And he had bought Bitcoin when it was like, $3 for one. And he had invested like $3,000 on it back then. So one morning he's in my house, and then the next morning, we are organizing this event, and the event is over. So we have a big barbecue, and then the next morning, everyone was waking up hangover, and it's like very slow. But then he wakes up and he goes like, "Whoa, dude, I'm rich," and then everyone just looks at him and like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Dude, I invested in this thing, and it's now worth $200." So that was like the first time that I heard Bitcoin, and the first time that I heard about like all of this, like the ups and downs that happens and the trends. So that was a really cool experience. And then I brought that up to my law school, to the labor law class. I'm like, hey, in the future, we're going to want to pay people in DLT-based assets. And then back then, everyone was like, dude, you're crazy. Like, that's never going to happen. There's no government behind it. Why would you trust something that doesn't have an army behind it? And I'm basically going like, hey, economical interactions are not based on governments or bodies. They're based on private entities that benefits themselves by using some service or something that each other are providing to them. And then the payment method is just a means of interaction. It could be shells, it could be paper, it could be whatever it's acceptable by the community. And if technology can do it better than paper, then yes, I believe that's going to be the future. And then and then I got into and I started learning more about Bitcoin. Unfortunately, I didn't invest that early, but I started learning more about it, and then I realized all the limitations that were out there. You know, like the number of transactions per minute, like the price per transaction, all of those things. And that's when I found out about Hedera, which was not necessarily to solve that purpose. It was more around when we were starting the company. In my head, I'm like, okay, cool, that solves a lot of the concerns I had initially, and I have after I started studying more about the topic. So that's a very strong technology, a very likable one to be one of the top one in the market and one of potential winners. And it caught my interest. Initially, I was a little bit skeptical, but then our CEO Nat was like, "No, you guys have to go. You guys have to go to the conference." And then we went to the conference, and everyone got convinced. So that's a little bit of my background.
That's very cool. I
Yeah.
just want to quickly jump in there. That's very cool to hear that, because Nat just randomly walked into my meetup in Vancouver, and that's how we met. And he came to the meetup. It was actually a very small meetup, like maybe 7 people showed up, but we had some food and had some good conversation. And then he obviously took the information back what he learned with you guys, and then you guys joined Hedera 18. So yeah, so tell us more about Otrafy.
Yeah, cool. So UltraPhi, our goal is to change the future of the food system. So we want to basically create a food system of the future where companies are connected to each other and information flows to provide better food safety as well as sustainability and more information, not only to the end customer, but as well as to the business interactions that happen in between. We originally started our project by serving farmers and basically giving them an access to a tool where they would be able to tell a story about their food and then share that information with the next step of that supply chain, which would be their buyers or their final customers in the retail store. We ran that project while we were in Hong Kong and more towards the beginning of the year. But as we kept moving at Otrafy and further developing our agenda, we got into a few partnerships in the US. So we got 2 accelerators investing in us out of the US, Techstars and the Iowa AgTech. And with those 2 accelerators, we got access to the good old corporate Americas system, and we got access to a lot of people and network that we originally were not able to reach out by ourselves, which also allowed us to improve our product. So we realized that the best way for us to be scale was to go after the buyer relationship in that interaction rather than the seller, because the buyer controlled all the power. So we did a full discovery where we knew where we wanted to go, but we weren't really sure who would take us there, what our first solution should look like, what would be scalable enough, who would be willing to pay for it, and how that would go. So for the past year, a big portion of what we did is basically just bringing that funnel down, one step at a time. Initially with, who are we going to address in the solution? This is the whole supply chain, and we want to build this for everyone, but we need to start with one. And then it's like, within that part of the supply chain, who is the person that we should be talking to? And then was within that person that we should be talking to, how does their day look like, and what part of what we have developed do they like the most, so that we should focus on this portion and do further developing on this. And then it's like, so how does the decision making process happen in these companies? So it's been a long process of basically creating a product, creating features, and now developing it and closing partnerships or pilots. That's been taking a lot of our time. But basically, we moved from that original idea where we wanted to serve the first layer, which was a seller, into an idea or concept where we're basically working with food processors and food manufacturers. And what we do is, those guys, they have a lot of paper documentation that they have to manage from their vendors, and a lot of times they have a lot of vendors in their buying base. So we help them manage those interactions. We help them automate follow-ups. We help them reach compliance, manage that documentation database on our platform. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And through that, we're collecting a lot of data. So the way that the interaction flow in a food supply chain is, I am onboarding you as a seller to my company. So I am asking you to provide me with 20 documents. I want to see your halal certification, your organic certification, your food safety practices, your BRC or SQF or whatever that certification is. And I want to have them all in my file base for your company, for your facility, and for the material I'm buying from you. And then they all have different expiring dates, and they all have different information that goes into each of those documents. And then you have hundreds, if not thousands, of materials and documents. So that interaction becomes really confusing really fast for those corporations. And basically we're making that simple, easy for them to understand, and transforming that into data that later on is not only an organic certification that is sitting on a PDF or a printed format. We actually have a piece of data on our tool that says this is the USDA based certification number that you can later on push to the next step of the supply chain to prove that that was really organic.
So Louis, are you working with regulators then as well? Are they able to access some of these certifications and files that are verified by Hedera?
So let me clarify. So basically, on the piece that we're building right now, we're focusing on the vendor-buyer interaction. There is no, at this stage, we have the capability, but we're not fully leveraging, pushing everything to a DLT network just yet. That is definitely going to be a part of the future developments as the tool evolves. But it's not something that we're addressing just right now, because right now we're focusing on the client needs and the client's first initial pain points that we're solving.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
That said, regulators are bringing up new legislation in America, and we are aware of some of them that are requiring traceability for different products and for different functionalities within different product layers, and that's something we're keeping a close attention span to. But yeah, it's a part of more of like the next step of our tool, while the initial step is solving that pain point of that management of vendors.
Lucas, I know you guys are relocating your head office. Does that tie into the decision with some of these partnerships and the regulators that you were just speaking of?
Yeah, for sure. So as we went to Techstars and as we went to the Iowa Ag Tech, we ended up developing a very solid network and base of support out of the Midwest, and they have been extremely helpful in also many ways that we, as a company, if we hadn't had the access to that community, would probably take us 3 years to do what we did in 3 months. So we made a decision that was so useful and so helpful that we should be actually staying there, and we are relocating to the Midwest, and it's absolutely so that we are closer to them and that we keep that relationship growing and making it stronger.
Yeah, it makes sense. And just to transition a little bit, I'm curious if you might be able to touch on for the viewers exactly why you guys decided to choose Hedera Hashgraph. What features, what characteristics were valuable to you? Because we know developers are paying attention to this space and the various different DLT options out there. Clearly, there's a wide range of choices. So why would a developer and a company adapt like yourself want to choose Hedera Hashgraph over another option?
Cool. So so I guess there is so let me start by clarifying. So there's layers within the solution that we're building, right? So the first layer, we are a SaaS platform, and realistically, because of the clients that we're working with and the people that we're looking to work with, they have a lot of security requirements, and they have a lot of already existing concerns. So we take the approach where, like the founders ourselves, we have worked really closely with Hedera when we understand technology really well. But we made the choice of, as a company, being blockchain agnostic. But that said, if people ask us, we will definitely say that we have a preference. But that should not be a part of our business interactions, and there's a good reason for it, because we're serving the client and not trying to push them to something. But that said, you know, if we're clear on what we prefer. So the reason why we as founders preferred Hedera, and the reason why we went to Hedera, is because when we were looking at transactions per second, that a DLT platform that will be able to handle multiple or thousands of transactions per second without lagging, Hedera was the best option. And that, if you're looking at supply chain interactions, you need to have that capability, because otherwise you can't handle the amount of transactions that that industry requires, and you're not going to be able to provide a really good service. So that's why we as founders got involved with Hedera in the first place, went to the Hedera Accelerator, and really liked the technology. So that was sorry.
Are you do you know if you're using on the ledger smart contracts to track, or are you using it more as like an audit log? So having the data stream through, some folks are using the cryptocurrency service in the memo field as a way to capture high throughput data. Do you know which one?
Yeah.
How you guys are
so the idea is to have it as a data log for us.
Cool.
So basically, have only one needs to be going in that log to be actually going on that log, and that is a process that it's a conversation with the clients as well. So on the original platform that was our service to farmers platform, we had already introduced that capability. On the platform that we're launching right now, and it's a enterprise level solution, there's a lot of security concerns. So we haven't been able to dedicate the time to have that as a part of the tool yet. It's going to be more of something we need to look in the future, and we know we need to look into the future. But dude, we're a startup. Like it's always a constant fight with limited resources, and it's challenging. It's fun, but we are prioritizing on what our client needs.
And that makes total sense. Yeah, and it's interesting to hear your perspective on that, because yeah, some dApps prefer the TPS, the transactions per second, or they want to focus on that, like yourself. Others like the governance model. Others like the finality aspect. So it's interesting to see which one each dApp use case focuses on, and yeah, you're not alone. A lot of people like the TPS, and I'm sure there's with your use case, I can suspect that yeah, you are going to have a large demand on the network for just a crazy amount of transactions. So yeah, that's going to be an important part for you.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I really like, and that was a big part of my thought process back when we went to the into the Hedera 18 conference, that actually got my switch going as well, was the fixed transaction price pegged to like whatever the average exchange rate is, because you can't charge your clients in HBAR or Ether or whatever that is. You can't charge your client in crypto. You need to use the currency that they want to use as well, right? So you can't, like the enterprises especially, they like to be clear on their budgets, and you can't tell them like, hey, your budget is going to be dependent on however much the price of this crypto is plus however much you're using. We need to get like our pricing model is, we're trying to get it closer and closer to something that is a fixed part of a budget of an enterprise, and it doesn't vary as much. So yeah, that was such a huge deal for us, that stable price per transaction. So that's what sold me on pretty much.
We've heard that feedback before. Yeah, it's an important part. Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing the insights there, Lucas. I guess we're going to transition. I don't know if we have any questions for Lucas in the live chat already. If not, we can move over to some of the dApp news. And Lucas, this is totally a casual brief of some of the news that's been shared in the community recently. So please jump in whenever it makes sense. But the dApp highlight we're going to touch on today is power transition. And then we're going to move over to the Hedera highlights. There's been a lot of news, a lot of, for lack of a better word, hype lately about quantum supremacy and quantum computing. And then we're going to touch on what Intiva Health has been doing recently as well, which is super exciting. All right, so let's start things off here with this crowdfund insider. Joe Alcott, Power Transition CTO, discusses how his company's Hedera Hashgraph-based platform uses energy more efficiently. This actually, in a way, ties into what Lucas was just talking about here. This is a great article. I hope if you have more time. Oh, and I forgot to mention at the beginning of the stream that if you're watching the stream or the recording, I'm going to include all the links of everything we're discussing today in the description below this video. So you'll be able to follow along and take a deeper dive in some of these articles. But we have a section down here that I wanted to highlight here. We're going to quote from Jiro. At the core of the power transition IMAAS platform are micropayments, peer-to-peer transactions of tiny amounts of cryptocurrency in real time. As energy is consumed, micropayments therefore require real-time finality. In other words, instant confirmation that a transaction has occurred. So they're also expecting high volume and are very interested in high TPS transactions per second. So Hedera is the only distributed ledger with the capability to truly achieve micropayments due to the speed at which it can confirm transactions. In evaluating numerous public distributed ledger networks, it became increasingly clear to us that only Hedera Hashgraph would be able to meet our technical needs in order to deliver a stable and secure offering to our consumers. So they are further refining this use case in a town called Corby in England, and it will scale up globally after they work out some of the finer points. But it's fascinating what they're doing. They're going to be integrating EV, electric vehicle technology into this as well, so that that a Hedera wallet that's paired with the vehicle will be able to pay for the power that it's charging with instantaneously. And then there was another article that I read recently where it was fascinating, where if a community experiences a power outage, then vehicles in the area would be able to plug into the system and then upload their power and then be compensated with cryptocurrency for sharing their electricity with the local grid. The idea is that this is a fundamental shift in how people are going to use, manage, and store electricity. And why not? Because if you can buy electricity at a cheaper rate from your neighbor rather than from the main grid, why shouldn't you get it at a better rate? Or if you, and I spent a bit of time in the UK recently, and I can tell you, solar panels on residential rooftops, super popular out there. And they got wind farms everywhere, super forward thinking. And so if you had these solar panels, why can't you generate an additional cash flow by selling the electricity that you're generating to your local microgrid? And that's what Power Transition is working on here. Super exciting stuff. All right, moving on here.
And I have that movement to and it's really cool you mentioned it. So the movement to put collect solar panel generated energy and share that on the grid on a DLT based transaction is actually I heard a few projects going on around the world, and I think that's really cool, honestly. Like think about how to get alternative sources of energy out there and how to properly incentivize that that producers to be a part of the network. Having a payment that can scale and can transit as fast as the energy goes, it's so important. And yeah, it's a really cool project, man. And I am definitely, I don't keep track of it as much as I would like, but I definitely, like, once in every few months I will go on the news and look into how those projects are doing, because I think they're really promising. They haven't been something that came out yet and basically just won the whole like what became famous globally or worldwide for being one of those projects. Meaning there hasn't been something that came on the market and my mom heard of and said, like, hey, did you see that I can get paid here in this app and then get energy that is not coming from the government? So there hasn't been something like that just yet, but I don't think it's going to take long. But again, it goes to that point that I was making, right? You need to have the fixed transaction fees. It's such an important part of the network, especially when you're talking about moving pennies per second. You have to have clear pricing structure for your users or your customers, because they don't like to buy stuff that is going to change in a day or in an hour or in a minute.
Otherwise, your business model is going to fail. Yeah, that's a very good point. And ultimately, power transition, much like Otrafy, is solving a very difficult problem here. These are incredibly difficult problems that you and power transition and other dApps are looking to solve. So, yeah. Okay, moving on here with the quantum conversation. Hedera Hashgraph founder says quantum computing is not a threat to cryptocurrency, although the claim is debatable. Lots of articles have popped up recently about this, and down here it was saying, as Dr. Baird points out, Dr. Baird, for those of you who don't know, is our co-founder and the inventor of the Hashgraph algorithm. He points out that the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, is holding a contest to find the best new encryption algorithm. And Dr. Baird thinks that cryptocurrencies could easily switch to that algorithm when quantum computing becomes a real threat. However, it is debatable as to whether quantum computing is no threat at all. Even Dr. Baird admits quantum computing will one day be strong enough to crack the cryptography of cryptocurrencies, just that they could easily switch algorithms by then. There's a lot of talk about quantum supremacy ever since Google made that announcement that their quantum computer was able to solve a problem in 200 seconds than a traditional computer would take 10,000 years to solve. And then I think it was 2 days later, IBM came out and said, well, we don't necessarily agree with that statement. So there's a lot of back and forth on quantum technology these days. But it was good to see that they took weight in Dr. Baird's comments, and I know Vitalik lately has been making some statements about that too, along the same lines as what Dr. Baird was saying.
Yeah, that's another big topic, right? So that Google announcement, that was a leaked announcement or whatever they considered it in the end. It wasn't like, it shows the power of that network as well, right? It was on air for like a few seconds or something like that, and everyone has access to it anyways.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they took it down like after, like, I don't know if it was minutes or seconds, but it was like only up on air for a very little amount of time, and then people downloaded it and shared. So basically, it was on there forever. But it was such a cool, like I was pretty impressed when I saw that announcement, because I'm very interested in it, and so it's definitely something that, the whole community, since the beginning of the times that I know of crypto, and I've been going to these meetups and I've been meeting people, there's always this fear that when quantum computing comes out, it's killing cryptocurrencies. And I think that Hedera has a very strong competitive advantage on that as well, and I would say that is because of the decision-making process coming from the council. So Hedera would be basically one of the technologies that would be able to move fast enough not to suffer the consequences of this technology actually being out in the market, while the other players, which are maybe fully decentralized from beginning, would have to face a higher resistance to get their non-official council members or stakeholders to participate on making that decision and bringing consensus to the network. So that would take longer than Hedera could reach that faster because of the governance model. And I think that's to say that there's an advantage there, because if quantum computer came out of the capabilities that it says that it can come out of, then it would create a huge impact in the market in a matter of days or seconds. So you need to have fast response on that.
Yeah, that's an important aspect. What Hedera Hashgraph did very differently is we drew a line down the middle and put governance on one side and consensus on the other. They're two very different things, and that was intentional so that there is a scalable and real world working governance model that can make those important decisions as the network becomes adopted more and more, and decisions need to be made. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this technology, like quantum computing, it doesn't come out of the blue. It doesn't come out like from nowhere. It's also like there's going to be tons of announcements in between, and there's going to be time for companies and protocols to process and adapt. But that is not to say that it could be faster than we think, right? And in that case, the ones that can address the concerns faster are the ones who can survive. Yeah. And then the other ones can survive, but they're going to have to go for some hurdles to readapt after that.
So, yeah, we're still in early days. We're still very much in early days. So, gonna shift gears here a little bit, because there was this Business Wire article recently talking about Intiva Health. And the reason why I want to highlight this for everybody watching is because Hedera Hashgraph is the public ledger, the public network. And then on the other side of the coin, if you wanted to deploy a private graph, a private ledger, because perhaps you don't want the attributes of a public ledger, you could always work with swirls and deploy on a private hashgraph algorithm. And that's what Intiva Health has decided to do. So here, Intiva's ReadyDoc, they've developed ReadyDoc, allows for the fastest placement and ongoing credentialing of physicians, nurses, and other licensed medical professionals. The innovative platform reduces the time it takes to verify and onboard new medical practitioners at facilities, ensuring quicker access to services for patients. The reason why this is such a fascinating use case is because I've dug a little bit deeper into this, and I've even spoken to medical professionals about this. And my understanding is that in the US, it can take anywhere between 3 and even upwards of 6 months for a medical facility, a hospital, to verify that that physician has all the necessary training that they need, that they don't have any lawsuits against them, and the list just goes on and on and on. It takes months for these hospitals to verify that these professionals are able to fill the role. And this technology with Intiva Health, this ReadyDoc that they've developed on the private hashgraph algorithm, reduces that complexity down to minutes, months down to minutes. And anytime you can capture that amount of value and get that medical professional to work that much quicker is just going to help everybody involved. So this is just a fascinating use case.
Yeah, that's well, I'm gonna do a little bit of promotion now here. That's the same logic with Otrafy. It's a process that takes, hours of the day of your employees and months of work and constant work and a team of people constantly working, and Otrafy basically automates all that process, and it's the same logic actually. It's like all this paperwork that you need to check and see if it's there or not, if it's valid or not, if there is anything wrong with it. That's the same logic that we do, but we do on the food processing and manufacturing side of traceability.
Exactly. And because Intiva Health is dealing with confidential information, clearly a public ledger wasn't ideal for them, so they went this route. But it's important to understand the differences there. But you're exactly right. Otrafy, you're compressing this lengthy, complex, convoluted system down to mere moments, and that's where you're capturing the value.
Yeah, and this is where the value of this kind of interactions are coming from, right? So if when you start digging in this traditional sectors, like how does a hospital hire a doctor? How does a factory onboard a soybean vendor? You find a lot of manual processes going on there, and there's multiple events. Those are just two, but there's like every single sector has its own way of doing things in an analog situation. And you can make that so much more efficient with simple technology. And then if you can power that simple technology with DLT capability, you can create such a big vision out of it. So yeah, that there's a lot of opportunity, and it's a good moment. It's a good moment to come in the market as well, because like these restrictions, in the F&B world, we see that they're raising. So now like a lot of this paper trail, paper documentation, the government is starting to ask for more and more and more. So companies need to address that. Same thing with healthcare. There's requirements for full traceability. There's requirements for more and more documentation to be out there. So companies need to start looking into those things. So it's a good time to be in that market.
In DLT, yeah, exactly. So we're gonna quickly talk about a couple Hedera's social sizzlers. Last week I posted this video of Dr. Lehman Baird on a panel at Web Summit. It outperformed all of our other tweets last week, and it was really good to see Dr. Lehman Baird participate in a panel. He does lots of presentations worldwide, especially right now, and he was actually speaking at Oxford over the weekend on Saturday, and I'm hoping to get some audio out to you guys later on today about that, so stay tuned. But this tweet did really exceptionally well, and then this one as well. What if a malicious node lies? How can bad guys affect consensus or the transaction timestamp order, and how does gossip work? He did an 1.5 hour workshop at Web Summit, and this is just a short 2-minute clip of Dr. Lehman Baird answering those questions. So definitely check these tweets out if you're interested in learning more about that. And we're getting ready to wrap things up here, but before we do, I want to quickly mention our hero of the week. We want to, oh, look at that, the picture didn't work. Oh, what the, I don't know what happened there, guys. I have to apologize to John because I had a picture there for him and it's gone. I don't know what happened there. But John is a very active admin in the Telegram chat. He's been in that Telegram chat since longer than myself and provides a ton of value to people. This is way overdue. So we've made John our hero of the week. And so John, if you're watching the live stream now or the recording, reach out to me. I'll probably ping you on Telegram immediately following this live stream. And we'll get you a discount code for the Hedera store, just as a small appreciation to recognize the value that you bring in the community and all that you do. It does not go unnoticed, and we really appreciate you very much. So I'm going to reach out to you shortly about that. And then a quick reminder for all the developers out there, please check out our docs page, docs.hedera.com/docs to get a better understanding of the value that Hedera Hashgraph brings you. If you are building or require high throughput and low latency for your DApp, you're going to want to take a very hard look at Hedera Hashgraph. We got a lot of value that we can bring to the marketplace, and you're going to be pleasantly surprised with what you see there. And before we go, though, I wanted to ask Lucas, what's next for Otrafy? What's the next big hurdle? What's the next big moment you guys are looking for?
Yeah, so as a company, we're focusing on building the services and features that we have identified with those food and beverage manufacturers that they need and that have value for them. So we're delivering that product to the market in January. So it's an enterprise level solution that fits and automates those interactions for those guys. We want that to be really, really successful so that we can take two major aspects of it. One of them is going to be bring that product out to as many people as we can and onboard as many companies as we can into the network, because we're bringing them real value. So that's going to be a big thing of next year. And then the second one is tying that up to our vision, which is like turning that information that we're bringing into the tool into data, and then seeing how we interact to connect that to the next level of that supply chain and start connecting those connections slowly so that we can get to our vision. So that's a big thing for us. We hope that there's going to be a Hedera 2020 this year, and we're definitely going to attend if there is. I was mentioning before the live chat, great food last year. It was just great presentations. Presentations were great, but I just remember the services and everything was really, really good, and it was like such a good conference that it got us to meet Mark Chang, which was the investor exclusively on Hedera. And it got us to start as a company, so it was a really big part of what Otrafy is. So we're definitely looking forward to keep participating on that. And I would say if there's people out there that have ideas and they want to do stuff on Hedera, they should definitely keep an eye open for that, because that was a huge thing for us, and it helped us a lot.
Well, right on. Yeah. If for nothing else, go to Hedera 2020 for the food. I like it. I like your perspective there. No, it was a great event, and I was lucky enough to attend myself. So for any developers watching this, you're going to want to keep an eye out for some big news that we'll be announcing with that. And next year undoubtedly is going to be a big year for Hedera Hashgraph. So, but before I say goodbye to everybody, just wanted to quickly check with Sharon. I haven't seen any messages yet or questions, so maybe perhaps we didn't have any questions for Otrafy this time, but we're going to have you back, and we'll I'd love to have you guys back on the live stream to see what kind of progress you've made. But yeah, so enjoy yourself in those final days in Vancouver there, and I miss my home, and so for all of you watching, don't forget to smash that like button if you like this content, you want more content like this. We do weekly live streams to touch on DApp industry related news, and leave a comment for us if you have a question for us, and we'll try to get you the information that you're looking for. But yeah, share this with your developer friends, and have a great week, everybody. We'll take care, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks.